The National Consumer Commission has acknowledged that more efforts have to be put in place to bring a fight to businesses that continue to trample on the rights of consumers. This is as today marks World Consumer Rights Day. The national event is held at Sun City near Rustenburg. Thezi Mabuza, Acting National Consumer Commission's Commissioner, joins us now. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, this day comes against a backdrop of several challenges being faced by South Africans. What then is important and significant about this day, particularly that consumers need to be aware of?
Unati, the most important thing that we think consumers need to be aware of is really to take their cash, exercise their rights, because what we had picked up as well is that as South Africans, we don't have the culture of checking on our receipt when we check out at the stores, particularly to check on the price that you had seen on the shelf, whether it is the same price that you are paying when you check out at the till. And that extra 2 or 3 rand here and there that you can save can definitely at the end buy a loaf of bread. And we had also seen that we do not really understand the standards that govern some of the goods that we are buying, like your speakers that we are buying, that they must have a conformity logo from ICASA, the bleach that you are buying, and the toilet paper, that it has to be regulated by the national regulator for compulsory specifications. In most cases, we become shortchanged by short measures on goods that we are buying. And sometimes our safety is being compromised by the repackaging of goods. So we are saying to consumers, please check on yourself, exercise your rights so that you can be able to save a cent here and there.
Now, as the National Consumer Commission, you've acknowledged, of course, that more efforts needs to be done and put in place, to bring a fight to businesses, those businesses that continue to trample, against the rights of consumers. And it is concerning because not a lot of consumers know what their rights are. So talk to us about those gaps that you think need to be closed. I mean, we often hear, that the Competition Commission is investigating several industries in terms of, not complying with certain competition laws, etc. But, there are other bodies, of course, that need to be fighting this for consumers as well as consumers themselves.
Unati, what we had picked up, the one thing that is really an inhibitor for us is our regulations. In certain instances, we have a number of regulators, and then I will just name but a few. When you look at the issues of meat and meat safety, sometimes when meat is imported and the safety on the slaughterhouses and all that, that has to be governed by the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture. But then in their laws as departments, they do not have enforcement powers. That would mean that even if the meat doesn't conform, all they can do is remove that meat from the shelf, but then there's nothing that they can do to some of the suppliers until then that we work or we act together. And then as well is the weakness as well in terms of, as I said, our legislation as well, is that in certain cases, while we are inspecting or doing the sweeps, some of our legislations don't allow us there and then because we are working with a civil law. It doesn't allow us there and then to issue spot fine or close those suppliers there and then. So we have to go through courts and all that and bring in a formal investigation before we can close. So our acts in terms of now looking at the rights of the suppliers on the other hand, and the time that it takes us as regulators to enforce that, going through all the hoops, even if we see that there is injustices, then it limits our powers as well. And the other weakness that we had picked up is around the issue of business registration. Most of the informal traders that you see that are being flighted right now is that when you go there, you want to serve that supplier. You would find that the name will be Thezi Mabuza now while you are issuing a compliance certificate. When you come back, you want to enforce it with an investigation certificate. What you find is that now the very same Thezi will be like saying, no, but I'm not Thezi. I am now Unati today. So Thezi just left last week. So it's a limiting factor for us because businesses in this country are not being forced to register their directors before they can even operate. So they would even either go as far as liquidating so that we don't have a leg to stand on, because our act says that we are dealing with businesses but not as individuals. So directors of companies are sometimes left scot-free, closing their businesses while they had benefited from the sales that we have given them.
Where consumers, see some of these transgressions, what are the practical steps that they can take, to contact, some of the bodies that we know are looking after just some of the problems that you've just mentioned?
The one thing that we want you as a consumer to do if you feel that your rights have been infringed, first thing is register that complaint with the supplier. But then for all of us, we are all residents of particular provinces. All provincial departments have within their Department of Economic Development a provincial consumer protector. That protector can do three things. They can mediate. That would mean that if you go to them, they can call the supplier, sit you and the supplier down, and then try to deal with your matter. They can also conciliate, wherein they can come up with a decision that says to the supplier, refund now. If that fails, then they can go and investigate. But then if all these provinces have investigated a particular conduct, let's say by a group of, let's say a franchise, for goodness sake, a franchise that operates in 2 or 3 different provinces, and then it's not complying, then they refer that matter to us. Our role as the NCC is to investigate and become a prosecutor on your behalf after mediation has failed, and then we now prosecute those matters at the National Consumer Tribunal. Our prosecution would allow us to ask for a fine against that supplier, but then also a redress for you as a consumer. So that is what you can do. The first thing that we have to do, as we're saying today, start by complaining.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's all we have time for this afternoon. Thank you so much for coming through. It's Thezi Mabuza, Acting National Consumer Commission Commissioner there.